Thank you and welcome again, and I'll hand it over across to Di now to facilitate. Thank you.
What a job! Thank you, Yung. That's I call it my partner in crime. So thank you very much for coming on board to, partner with us on this conversation. And I'm really kind of thrilled to have Rebecca here and to have Tang here. And so the topic tonight is identity and belonging. It's interesting because I've been when Yung and I met to discuss the series, what are the topics we should explore this year, we want to bring it back to the individual. Because at the end of the day, leadership also starts from you. So you can have a lot of programs, you can have a lot of, mentoring and coaching and all that, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. So then we looked at what are some of the issues that you yourself actually could prevent you from kind of aspiring for that leadership roles. And we thought, well, let's start with identity and belonging. And that's quite, I suppose, relevant because I think a few months, 4 weeks ago, when the whole issue of Mark Latham talking about, speaking English and all that stuff, I penned a piece for LinkedIn talking about what does it mean to be Australian? Do you have to speak English? Do you have to, I cannot look. Yeah, I look Asian, obviously, and so, but does that prevent me from being an Australian? And what are the things that makes us an Australian? So I think identity and belonging is a very important topic, and this empty chair is there, and I would really encourage everybody in this room to step into that empty chair and not wait till about, 20 minutes later and they start coming on board and they say, oh, you didn't leave us enough time to ask questions. Well, start as soon as possible because the conversation can only take place with your contribution. That's what's unique about what we're trying to do at Dawn. The discussion points, I suppose, is, a recent Scanlon Foundation report surveyed more than 10,000 people across Australia to understand Australian feelings, perspectives on migration and settlement of newly arrived refugees. It talked about Australia is a good country for migrants, a view supported by international survey, country rankings and a wealth of surveying, in addition to the Scanlon Foundation surveys conducted annually since 2009. So asked to indicate their level of happiness in Australia, of those who arrived in the last 15 years, just 13% indicated that they were very happy or unhappy. Only 6% indicated they are strongly dissatisfied or dissatisfied with their life in Australia. The rest indicated they were very satisfied and happy. So the majority of newly arrived migrants and probably people who are, came here like myself, feel very much integrated. But when asked if they had a sense of belonging in Australia, just 9% of recent arrivals indicated not at all, so there's no sense of belonging. Close to 65% of arrivals since 2001 indicated a sense of belonging to a great or moderate extent. And apparently from 1991 to 2000, 82% of those who arrived between 1991 and 2000 said yes. So the longer you are here, the more you kind of feel like you belong. But the question is, and I suppose I'll put it to Rebecca and also Tang, so how does this play into the environment of leadership, our corporate environment, and the potentials of an individual to be to aspire to a leadership role? You might feel like you belong, but what are the opportunities and what are some of the challenges for them, stepping into leadership roles?
Okay. Look, I think for me, there's a difference between belonging and feeling really valued. And I hope at an organisation like Westpac, all people feel that they belong in a sense. Certainly that's our intention as leaders, and I'd be very interested in your perspectives about whether you feel we're hitting the mark there. But in terms of whether you feel really valued for your personal contribution and that you have the ability to reach your full potential, sometimes those things can feel a little different. You may feel generally accepted. We're happy to have you as part of the general population, but do you feel that as an organisation we take time to understand your unique talents and give you individually the opportunity to really grow and shine. And certainly based on some of the data in the blueprint that was released last year, I'd say there's a really serious question for us to ask and answer about whether at Westpac we're truly valuing talent from diverse backgrounds. And I mean that, you know, there can be race, religion, ethnic background. And I think there are some challenges there still for us. So I think belonging is important, but I also think being given the opportunity to truly reach your potential is important. But then as Di mentioned, the primary responsibility for that rests with each of us. So from a senior leadership point of view, I think, are we creating an environment, not just where you belong, but where you can be the best person you can be? And then how do each of you respond to that to stick your hand up where you want additional and extra opportunities? So I'm not trying to complicate it, but I think there are a number of elements to the conversation. For me, belonging is a really important foundation, but coming with that says, can I reach my full potential? What are the obstacles in the way? And are you empowered and supported to bust through those?
Rebecca's right, absolutely right. I feel, and I had a conversation with two people today, and they come from, you're in the audience, so you know who you are. They come from diametrically opposed. I won't name you, so no naming and shame. They come from opposite ends. It's just so incredible. One person is saying, I have all these ideas, I always want to contribute, but you know, how do I get that through in this sort of environment? The other person says, you know, I know it's within me, the change is within me to actually voice some of what I'm feeling to make sure that I can get that through and make the change I need to make. So I think Rebecca's right on both fronts. So the truth is somewhere in the middle. We can't expect any organisation, not just Westpac, any organisation to completely change what they do for you. But the change will happen if you start to take some ownership of it and some responsibility. Because I think, for me, the biggest problem is to go, whoa, diversity is a problem, you know, I'm the thing, and it's all too hard to change all of that. Because you're literally raising the white flag and saying, it's environmental, none of it's within myself. And I think when you find it within yourself, that's actually when you can actually affect a change from the outside. Because no one's going to change if they don't think you've got the conviction within you. Why would an employer change if they think, you know, you're not even confident enough to do it? And yes, I know, and Rebecca and I had this conversation before. These conversations need to be challenging. They can't be a kumbaya when we all come there and agree that, you know, things can be better. There's only so much Westpac can do. There's only so much, it's not just Westpac, any organisation can do. There's got to be some ownership from your end. And I know that sounds hard, but I've learned from the hard way, no one's going to make the change unless you start to, that momentum. I don't know what you think about that. But.
Look, I mean, I think I often at every single forums, I leave the forum saying, look, at the end of the day, it's all up to you at the end of the day. But I wonder, like in terms of, you know, you talk about belonging, it's about not so much the belonging, but being valued. Do you think that, I mean, this connects with the identity, because how do you identify, you know, working in the workplace, do you see yourself as an Australian or mix or whatever? That gives you a sense of belonging more, and therefore maybe what you do will be valued more, depends on how you identify yourself. Do you think that's the case?
One of the reasons I chose to come to Westpac is because I felt this organisation's values aligned to my own. I've worked in some other places, and Yung outlined that, and I had amazing opportunities at those places, but I didn't feel they were my long term home from a career perspective. They were challenging and they gave me more opportunities than I could possibly fit into a 24-hour period or a year. But actually, it didn't feel like home. And so I chose Westpac because I thought it would be a long-term home for me. And so in a sense, there was that element of belonging. I thought, this seems to me to be a place that says integrity is important, achievement is important, customer is important, as well as team, actually. And I'm, reciting back to you words in our own values. And I have genuinely found that to be my experience at Westpac. But the other thing that I have reflected on, in my time here and also in my time as a parent, is that, a sense of identity is a really, really personal thing. And as I have grown in experience at Westpac, and frankly also as I have grown older, I've spoken to some of you before about the fact that I have felt more comfortable with the aspects of me that are different, with the fact that, I come from a mixed race background, I'm very proud of that, I'm keen to talk about it. And so aspects of my identity that previously I'd wanted not to talk about, now I really do want to talk about and share and see if elements of that resonate with other people. And that's where I think as organisations, coming back to my earlier point, have a responsibility to create an inclusive culture, but also one that values people who bring their whole selves to work and feel differently about different things. And that's quite a high bar for an organisation, and it's a difficult thing to do. But to me, if we create that sense of trust, essentially, amongst ourselves, where you feel you can either share or not share, you can talk about the things that are similar or you can talk about the things that are different, then we will succeed in not just creating an environment where you can thrive as an employee, but actually a better society. And that's my goal, actually, for myself as a leader and for Westpac. And maybe that sounds a bit, highfalutin and naive, but I think, the world is in such a difficult place now. If we don't set our goals high for that kind of lofty aspiration, then, we're going to miss an opportunity.
I'll tell you a story about, I came to Australia when I was 10. And, my only dream was to be like an Australian. So I remember, and this is really sad, please don't judge me, but there was an ad for the Australian, those of you old enough will remember, and it had this guy sitting on his porch, I don't know why the Australian had this, and he had curly hair, and, Aussie guy. I went and got my hair permed. And any of you, actually quite a few of you have Asian hair, you know what it looks like when you try to perm it. It really doesn't work. But I did it because I felt like that's all I wanted to be. I was sick of looking different. I was sick of eating different food. And actually, I'll tell you this other thing. My parents used to give me sandwiches with raw garlic in it to take to lunch. We know better. I mean, that's what you eat. That's what you do. So you kind of do it. And you wonder why everyone's looking at me kind of weird. So my whole time was like, how can I be the same as everybody else? How can I have my space food sticks? How can I have all these normal things? Which is fine. I really went through high school with that. And it doesn't help that we grew up in Penrith, and I was always the only Asian child in the class. Now, I'm not going to bag those experiences because I actually felt it actually made me feel better about myself. Then when I finished university, I went back to Vietnam. That was the first time I went back to Vietnam on my own. And going back, I was the only time, and I think a few of you growing up would probably resonate with this. It's the time you actually woke up and you go, hey, there is actually beauty in being different. There's beauty in... I saw the rich culture in Vietnam. I thought, gosh, thousands and thousands of years of culture. I went to the temple and it was beautiful and it was great. And I actually thought, the thing that actually makes me interesting is my cultural background. If I wanted to be the same as everyone else, I'd be exactly, an apple in all the other apple places. And I've spoken to quite a few people, younger, I still mentor a few people, And that was they needed to get to that stage when they feel actually is good to be different. And I particularly feel like in the workplace, like, so we work in an advertising agency. We do a lot of brainstorms because, you know, there's actually no new original idea in the entire world. Like, whatever you do, you can come up, you know, we did the Spring Lamb campaign, we do all this, but, you know, it's really hard. And you know what? We're getting a second generation of young they're born in Australia, but we pull these, you know, Asian Australian, Indian Australian, Filipino Australian kids into the brainstorm, and the ideas they come up with, you know, they don't think it's that particularly amazing. They have turned out to be amazing ideas. We're going to roll out a campaign for Sprite in September. One of their ideas actually made it kind of happen. And it's exactly your point about value. We value them because in a world of, you know, things being generic, it's actually the difference. So in marketing, what's it? Point of difference is actually what you strive for, not point of similarity. You could try that. I don't think you last very far.
But I'll come back to advertising. Please, can I encourage, in between what we're discussing, and if there's a spark of an idea and you wanted to kind of come up and, you know, take up from where Rebecca or Tang, you know, left, please do just pop up. I encourage you to do now, because don't wait till about, you know, towards the end. Oh, there you go, Nadia. Excellent.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting that you'd be talking about identity. My background is in diversity and inclusion consultancy, but I'm very big on identity because my background is in education, and I empower individuals to go inward to be proud of who they are. And I always share this story, and I'll share it here, that when I was a young girl in primary school, I was born and raised in Australia, by the way, but when I was a young girl in primary school, I get asked, "Where are you from?" And being naive, I'd say, "Campsie." And then in my teens and young adulthood, I got asked, "Where are you from?" And at that point, I had a connection with heritage, and I'd say, "I'm Lebanese." But then later in life, I went to Lebanon, and they asked me, "Where are you from?" And I was still getting asked. And it does stir the question, so where am I from? And the Australians say, "Where are you from?" And when I say Australian, I get, how can that be? And I wasn't born with a scarf, by the way, it was a choice. So the beauty of identity is absolutely the fact that we grow into identity when we self-reflect. That's really powerful. And we need to accept who we are as an individual in order to move forward and to feel valued. And if you don't accept who you are, then at what point are other people going to accept you? Yeah, so thank you very much. I just love this topic. And congrats everybody for being here tonight, because it's just a door opening for you. The true person that looks at you and sees beyond your physical differences, yeah, then they see the value in who you are. Yeah? But you need to value yourself first. And, you know, I've been teaching for over 20 years, and every single student tells me, "I'm not good enough. I'm going to fail. I can't do this." And that's just the chatter in our mind. And that's in education. What about identity? What about who we are as an individual? And if we allow the questions to surface, then take the time to look inward and see who you are for who you are, and be proud, because there is no two people on the planet like you. And you are a contribution to the organisations. And the organisation do want you. And I always say to my students, and in the consultancy role that I'm in, you need to stand up. You need to be seen. You need to be heard. Thank you.
So there are two things. Just going what Naja said. Identity. Do you think that you need to be very confident about who you are, and accept who you are, your identity, in order to actually really be able to progress in a leadership role, be it in Westpac, like to have that confidence to be able to aspire to a senior leadership role?
I do think confidence and knowing yourself are very important, but they're kind of linked. I guess in my experience, Westpac is a very big organisation and it has good, strong values, but it is complicated and a lot of it is like spaghetti. And you know, I have certainly found personally, and in a lot of the people that I lead and mentor, that there is real benefit in taking some time to think through what is the value I have to add to this organisation and its customers, and how can I change it, and quite explicitly explaining that to people. You know what, you can die waiting for someone to come and tap you on the shoulder and say, you would be amazing at this, can I give you an opportunity? Or you can actively put yourself out there, and that's where confidence is important. So I have certainly found that seeking out opportunity and showing people that I really want to make a difference has absolutely helped me. But it has taken me some time to figure out how to be good at that. And I think for me and a lot of other people, there's a real element of psyching yourself up for that, and I guess being prepared to take a big risk. Because if you either wait to be asked or, I guess, hedge your bets and are unsure, that comes across to people, because you are dealing with someone who in turn perhaps has some questions about their ability to achieve what they can, is feeling an enormous amount of pressure. And I think the way you project yourself is incredibly important. But that does not mean becoming someone that you're not. And that gets back to the point about values. I think, you know, this is an organisation that sets out to value people for all of the qualities they bring, but it's busy and it's spaghetti, right? So if you say, okay, I'm prepared to take a leap of faith that that's the way this organisation is oriented, and I will believe in the good of it, then hopefully that gives you, I guess, the confidence to say, how do I put myself out there in a way that's still true to myself, but actually shows people what I can do. But you need help when you do that, is my experience. I have needed help to do that. So it's incredibly important to find people who you can kick this stuff around with, who you can say, gosh, I might like to achieve this, or I think I could add this, how might I go about it? And generally speaking, even though they're busy, people love to help other people, and you'd be amazed what people will do for you if only you will ask. So summing that up, I do think confidence is important, but in your own way. It's not about creating a different persona, but it is around taking a deep breath and saying, I back myself to take this chance, and I will ask people for help. I'll be grateful when I receive it, and I in turn will pass it on to others.
I mean, there's a saying, you have to fake it in order to make it. I mean, you know, like, I mean, you're saying, you know, you kind of put yourself out there, you have to, you know, ask the questions, but what about fake it till you make it?
I actually think Rebecca's right. Like, you know, again, I was saying to someone before, sometimes we're too close to ourselves. We think that if we fail once, everyone in this room is going to look at us and go, you know, Tongue failed today on the 24th of May at 7 o'clock at night. You know, that's thinking way too important of yourself. People have much bigger priority than what you've got. And if any of you ever listen to podcasts about, you know, commerce, startups, they actually encourage you to actually fail. That's the only time you're actually going to learn. So what Rebecca says is exactly right. Don't change yourself, because, you know, you've got to be authentic. If you're not authentic, that's so obvious. But you've got to give yourself permission to learn and permission to fail, as long as you learn from that to go on. And that's the philosophy we have. I mean, we're a much smaller organisation. We're a team of 7 within the whole group of 500 people. But one of our values is curiosity. Because when you're curious, it allows you permission to actually try something new, and allows you a chance to not maybe, because you're going somewhere where no one has been, or where you haven't been before. So all we ask though is that you learn from the experience for the next time. So, and I just want to kind of end this bit on one other thing. I focus a lot on, different is better. If you talk about cultural diversity, 1 in 5 people in Australia speak a language other than English. So it's not, in the old days, we used to fudge it by saying born overseas. Born overseas could be born in the US, born in the UK, born in New Zealand. It's just really artificially inflating the numbers. It's just not right. But 1 in 5 in Australia speak a language other than English at home. 1 in 4 in New South Wales, 1 in 3 in Sydney. 7 in 10 in Fairfield and Auburn local government areas. So can I challenge you, what's mainstream and what's not? And if you look at the American experience, the Latino population are projected to overtake the white population within not a long period of time. In a way, it's a balancing act, isn't it? Are you a minority or are you a majority? You can think of yourself as a minority for all your life and act as a minority all your life. You can think of yourself as someone who's empowered, who can learn from what you do, and as Rebecca says, learn, have mentors to be able to support you to go through it, and understand if you make mistakes. It's not like, and I know it's easy to say because, I don't have to do it, but do think about it that way because it's the only way you're going to grow. What's Einstein's definition? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing.
Over and over and expecting it. Yeah,
It ain't going to happen.
But then going back to what you're talking about, say in terms of the numbers of overseas born or culturally diverse background, going back to your advertising before, we still see across our mainstream institutions or mainstream media or advertising is still very much predominantly particular group, dominantly white. Like the Labor Party just did an ad recently, I think a few weeks ago, where it says it's Australian workers, when it's actually, if you look at it, does it really represent the current Australian workforce? It doesn't. So how much does advertising really also should have some kind of responsibility to change that representation, that what we see across the billboards and on TV screens?
Hugely important. Is this been taped? I guess it's been
Yes,
taped.
it is been taped. Come up if you're going to have a question. Question.
It's interesting that in some cases it's actually intentional, and I won't mention what campaign is, but it's fairly obvious. It would have gone through so many people, and it was done for, I won't say what campaign, for a marginal electorate. So in some cases, it's actually much more, for me, unintentional, you can actually fix because I didn't know what I was doing, I can fix it. I should think in some cases actually intentional, and that's a bigger issue. And in terms of advertising industry, yes, know very well. They did a survey of where the advertising people live, eastern suburbs and inner city. None of them kind of live out in the west. Yet, where's the population growth? Where are the young people? And that's the interesting thing that you say that. Sprite was tossing it. Should we sponsor the night noodle market? Because we have this product that works, I can't review what it is, works really well with hot, spicy food. We actually came to them and we said, yeah, you can spend all your money on one campaign in the city where none of the young people live, or you can do 4 festivals out in the west where the young people live, hot, spicy food. I wonder how that can kind of fit into that sort of arena. The client actually went, well, actually, I think that kind of makes sense. So we're doing 4 festivals, 2 in Sydney and 2 in Melbourne, for the same price that it would have activated 1 event in the city. And the symbolism of that, having something inside, yet another thing in Surrey Hills or in the city, versus something, one review where, Cabramatta, Blacktown, what a difference that signal makes. And you know how we got through that? We went, the data, your target audience is 15 to 25, I think. Where are they? Where are they living? And what symbolism is it for you actually to go where your audiences are, which is marketing 101. But can I just still kind of end by saying there's got to be something within you to kind of spark them, because no one else is going to do for you.
I love that line.
Hi, my name is Frank, and as you can see, I'm one of the few Anglo-Saxons in the room. And what I'd like to address the non-Anglo-Saxons and say that Australia is a terrific benefit of you simply being here. in your families, because really Australia has come from an unusual position. Firstly, we're an island mentality thinking, which has its problems. We don't have to deal with other people because we're an island, and that feeds into xenophobia. But we need to become more and more confident of our abilities, and your being in the country and contributing your culture to this culture will change that, and we'll become the country we should become.
I'm going to say
Thank you.
Rebecca's point, because we were chatting about this before, but I really reckon this forum would be great if you had someone who actually has a completely different point of view.
Oh.
Because I think...
Well, I can do that probably.
No, from what you said, I think you can't.
No, I can play the naughty boy. I can play the protector.
Because I kind of think, because that's what you face with in the real world. It's not, we're not in this... I mean, it's great to be in a safe space. I'm absolutely fine. But when Rebecca said it to me, it really kind of dawned on me, Kumbaya is great, but at some stage you're going to have to face real life, and you need to understand what the objections are. And I'm not saying that they're valid, but I'm saying we need to know what those objections are. And I think if I can make one suggestion, but you need to make them feel welcome. It's not like, in a hornet's nest.
But I think the concept behind these forums is actually to tap into the thoughts and thinking of people who are in organisations like Westpac, who are having their own internal dialogue internally to themselves, saying, maybe I can't do this, maybe I can't, at least now there's Rebecca in the group executive, but people who might have wanted to aspire to a group executive role or to be the CEO of Westpac one day, too scared to even think that. So the idea behind this is that you are encouraged to think that. And so I think that's one aspect, but the other aspect is exactly right, is to bring somebody who's actually also will have a different perspective. I had a conversation this morning with, I won't name who he is, he's a senior guy. We were talking about diversity in leadership, culture beyond gender, and where I am, we have quite a lot of women in leadership roles, which is fantastic. So the gender actually is more women than men, which is really not balanced either. But I said, well, what about the cultural aspect? He goes, what are you talking about culture for? He goes, what, are you now we're going to appoint people based on the colour of their skin? I said, no. The concept, the idea is that from the start, the assumption is that they do have capability. That's the assumption, that's the benchmark.
In perspective, those numbers are very small. And,
yeah.
On the group executive team, I'd say, I have a mixed race background, as I've spoken to you about, and another person who's very comfortable and confident talking about his background is George Frazis, and that's a wonderful story. If you haven't heard George's story, he obviously comes from a Greek background. He grew up in Darwin, and he spent time in the Air Force before he became a banker. So he has this wonderful perspective to share, and just a lovely way of articulating his story. He's so proud of being Greek. He's so proud of being Australian, and he really celebrates that diversity himself, but with his team. And so, we do work to try and have quite a different conversation, but I think there's real work to do to make sure the leadership team in Westpac is more reflective of the cultural diversity of our general population.
Hi guys, I'm Varuna. I work within the life insurance team. So really thoroughly enjoying the conversation so far, and completely confer with the thought process that obviously we need to be a proactive driver, create opportunities for yourself and drive your progress. By the same token, I do, have certain questions or maybe just comments or observations about competing trends or competing in, environment that we are currently working with. And so obviously you have leaders who might come from different cultural backgrounds, or were just born, brought up and raised in Australia, and they have very set values, and they're ingrained it in their own ways. Do you feel that tolerance and having an appetite to accept diversity and embrace diversity and fostering diverse sort of conversations within the team actually plays a part in terms of either supporting your career progress or in impeding it. So I guess from personal experience, I've found that there are some leaders who obviously, I guess, promote that sort of an environment, such conversations, but then there are others who have their own sort of ways about going about things, and they don't probably tune themselves to the differences amongst their team members. And
so they kind of basically will promote those unconsciously, those that look like them, are you saying, and think like them?
I mean, not just from a physical point of view, but it's almost like you're encouraged to conform to a stereotype. So it's sort of like if you are aiming to step into a senior leadership position, then you're expected to present a certain way, dress a certain way, almost argue a certain way, if you like. And there are certain cultures, in fact, especially Asian cultures, that probably don't promote someone sort of questioning, certain authorities, and and they might feel a bit reluctant to sort of challenge someone in a large organization. So how do you sort of, I guess, create an environment that sort of accommodates for all those different differences and also gives you an opportunity to almost progress without conforming to a stereotype?
How do you not conform in an organisation if you want to go up to a leadership role?
Yeah. Well, why don't I take a crack at that? Look, I think that is a really good question and something that I wrestle with quite a bit. I think it's very natural to have a level of unconscious bias in that you tend to relate quite easily to people who are similar to yourself. And one of the things that my leadership team and I have been thinking through is how do we create opportunities to really value people who participate differently. So I'll give you a quick example of that. I don't know, have any of you done the Myers-Briggs personality? Yeah, okay. So if everybody in your team is an ENTJ, how do you create a space for the person who's an F? Or like the introverted feeling person. And I think the first thing there is actually an awareness that there are different styles. So whether it's Myers-Briggs or something else, as leaders turning on your awareness that people are wired differently and they contribute differently. And then sitting back and going, in a large organisation, we are generally wired for the ENTJs, right? Meetings are busy, we're in a rush, there's a lot of spaghetti. Your voice will get heard if you're confident, if you speak loudly, if you're prepared to stand up and be counted. But we could be missing a lot of really introverted, deep thinkers who have amazing, amazing perspectives. So I think the first point is the awareness. And the second thing is about thinking, how do we change our leadership structures, the way we govern and run the organisation, to deliberately draw out those contributions? And you can do that in a range of different ways. You can call for people who are particularly interested to participate in a way that suits and works for them. You can move away from the format that rewards and recognises the person who cries out in a crowd and sticks their hand up, and actually find other ways of communicating and highlight the value that those people are bringing. So it takes awareness, it takes time, and it takes care, and it's very important. So I think we need to focus on changing the organisation at the same time as changing the people. And I don't mean turning everybody into an ENTJ, but I do mean giving people the confidence to contribute to the best of their ability in their own particular way. I think you have to do both of those things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's also an element of contradiction when, for example, you go out, post a job ad, and often you hear hiring managers say to the recruiter, well, I'm just looking for a good cultural fit. But then that fit is pretty much, in their eyes, someone who conforms to them. So it's sort of like changing the conversations and almost redefining what that cultural fit means might pave the way.
Any thoughts on that, Tang?
No, can I add to that? Rebecca's spot on.
Yeah, I think so. But I think to add on to what Rebecca said, I think in terms of leading a culturally diverse organisation or team is quite challenging in itself. I think so it takes a courageous leader, I believe. It takes a leader who kind of see beyond, the bigger vision to bring people together that you can, those who are quite the quiet deep thinker, those who are the alpha, I call the alpha males or alpha females, and how to get them to work collaboratively. But at the same time, again, it goes back to your individual self. I mean, you come into these kind of forums, then you get, ideas spark, and if you're someone that is a thinker and kind of a bit more like from an Asian cultural perspective, you don't want to challenge the status quo, you don't want to challenge authority, then you actually, I mean, this is an interesting thing. Do you have to conform slightly in order to kind of break through, or do you kind of maintain your cultural norms and who you are in order you think, well, this is who I am, and therefore, they either accept me or not? What do you think, Rebecca?
Rebecca, is there a mentorship program in Westpac?
Look, we have a whole bunch of programs. There are programs that are run within divisions, and then there are things that go across the group. My personal perspective, the arrangements that work best for me are the ones that you kind of either seek out yourself, or they're a bit more organic. Look, in terms of your question, I guess everybody has their own deal with the organisation is kind of the way I think about it, right? So you go, I'm making a deal with my employer. I give you all my waking hours, and in turn, you give me an opportunity to grow and develop. And unfortunately that's turned out to be pretty literally true in a lot of my working career. But I think, as part of that deal, you need to be comfortable with that deal, and that deal can change over your career. So in terms of my deal with the organisation, there have certainly been times when I have taken on a lot of risk and been given opportunities that are really, really full on. And we were talking earlier about sort of, the difference between your comfort zone, your learning zone, and your terror zone. And, I've certainly spent time in the terror zone. And in those moments I've gone, this deal does not feel like it's really working for me so well at the moment. But rightly or wrongly, I have felt I have come this far in this organisation, and so that I feel that I'm doing the right thing by myself, but also for other people who may be seeing me as a role model, I need to stick this out, actually. And that may mean doing something I feel quite uncomfortable. It may mean working incredibly hard. It may mean taking personal risk. For me, that works because one of my kind of life goals is whatever I do, I give it my absolute best shot. Maybe partly that's Chinese heritage, maybe it's just the way I'm wired, it's that kind of diligence and hard work, so I feel that. But I also feel, gosh, I really need to give this a good crack because I've got this far, and there are some people watching me going, is it possible for someone to do that? And if I flake out now, those people are going to go, well, maybe it's not. And it could actually be because I made a different choice, but I've been quite aware of that. It doesn't mean I feel martyrish at all, but that's, again, the deal I've made with the organisation. I say, you give me opportunities and I will give it 110%. And as part of that, that means I do things sometimes quite deliberately that I find very, very hard. And I go home at night and I toss and turn and I worry, but then I sit back and I go, wow, I really feel as if I'm giving this my best shot, and I get a deep level of satisfaction out of it. That's my personal threshold. You will all have your own personal thresholds. But for me, my kind of goal, it's not around sort of being happy in the moment. It's, do I feel a deep sense of satisfaction that I was absolutely the best I could be, and I did the best I could as a team member and as a leader?
One of the things I don't know if you guys feel the same thing. One of the things when I was growing up, I found, being a migrant, is you don't have someone you can turn to ask for advice, because you don't know what the norm is anyway. So you're always thinking you're doing something wrong. And one thing I have found at every place I went to is I found, for myself anyway, a mentor in that organisation who can actually just help me navigate the system, because I don't know what the system's like. And over the years, I've ended up doing the same thing for the younger people, because I know where the ground rules are. And I just find, I always think when I was younger, if I had someone, it would make things so much better. My only advice to you is that there's nothing to stop you from seeking a mentor within Westpac to approach them. And I think Rebecca was right. Who in their right mind, if someone comes up to them and asks for help, and they're genuinely great employees, and to be honest with you, it's more selfish me being a mentor these days because I feel good about it. It's not about them actually, it's about me, really.
If you're not in Westpac, you can come to Dawn.
Yes, or Dawn, I'm absolutely fine, but it's, yeah.
But I completely, as you were saying, Rebecca, that are there any more questions? Annie? Okay. I won't make any comment. I'll let Annie ask the question.
That's all right. Hello. So diversity is a very interesting subject for me as a female, having gone through very male-dominated situations. But I think different groups tend to have different conversations, and there's a lot of expertise around cultural diversity here. What is some of the major issues that happens when multiple cultures come together, whether it be an individual into a new cultural organization or perhaps two branches within different companies trying to have their workforces working together peacefully?
Do you want to talk to that first? Or?
I can do, I can talk underwater.
Go on.
I think, again, it depends on your company culture, but we, in our company, we actually think diversity is, the way to be. So we, again, to Rebecca's point, we help managers navigate diversity and understand diversity and how to kind of deal with it. And actually, ironically, I think that's what helps people from different cultures become better managers in our organisation, because we manage differences much better than anybody else can. But I think, that's how we kind of look at it, because we look at differences as being in media, we need to be different. So we understand kind of differences and we value that sort of difference. So it may be different because banking might be different, but in a creative field, that's kind of how we work. And just to let you know, we're moving to this thing we call agile working, and I'm sure kind of Rebecca knows about it. There's a few people who are still kind of resisting it. But basically what it is breaking down what team you're in, what group you're in. You kind of form based on a project. And you gather because of your differences, not because of your similarities. Imagine everyone being the same, working on that project. We're doing quite a big pitch at the moment, and we're doing exactly that. We're pulling people, different organisation, different levels, different skill set, different, I don't mean cultures, but kind of just people being different, working on this one project. And it's still, I wouldn't say it was perfect, because there's still a lot of resistance. It's not an easy thing to do. But that's part of the fostering that actually difference is better. And we're finding that people are opening up because they're feeling actually that they can actually contribute something rather than being the same. And I think if there's one thing, and it's much easier for a smaller group to say this than kind of a big organisation, but if you can try and encourage that, the benefits actually is in the creative thinking and differences. The only way you're going to come up with something different, because we're going to this tender where there's 5 other really major agencies going for it. We all know they're going to say that we're great at strategy, we're going to be great at implementation, we can get the rates really low. I mean, really, I have seen so many, I mean, Jack, you're in strategy. I've been at every media agency there, and they all have a different name for each of their strategy thing. But really, it's the one process. It's a one peak that they're putting different lipstick on. So.
Look, I would say, I think in my observation, there can be a lot of potential for misunderstanding and poor communication, particularly if the leaders in an organisation all come from similar backgrounds and the team members are the ones that are diverse. And I think that can be really challenging. And one of the ways that can manifest is in, if the leadership and all of the organisational structures and ways of running the company are geared around what's comfortable for one culture and not another, you can get a situation where people are like, well, those guys didn't have much to contribute, or I asked them if there are any problems and they didn't tell me, and then I found out some problems. Does that mean that they are, not understanding or don't have the right level of capability? Whereas in actual fact, what it can mean is a group of people who are incredibly diligent, care about their work, but don't feel comfortable being interrogated in an open forum. And so I think where you do have those kind of, real disparities in the level of cultural diversity or background, particularly between team members and team leaders, it's incumbent on the leaders, again, to slow down enough and go, hey, okay, what might be the impact of this dynamic, and how do I take steps to make sure that the way I'm leading and running these teams means we are communicating, that people are given a chance to contribute, and that we focus on a common goal, actually. So I think, the risk you're calling out is a real one. It does require time and care. And it can be managed really successfully, and you can get a great outcome the way we've been describing. But, like most things, to work well, it takes a bit of time and care.
Have you found any, oh, sorry.
Last question. Yes,
That's all right.
that's the
I'll
last.
let it go on to another person.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So the last question to wrap up is that what's the advice that you both can give to those who are thinking or aspiring to leadership roles, and in their organisations? Any tips?
I would just say, have a go. It's when you do an exam and you always think, oh my God, I did terribly, and then you very rarely do as terribly as you think. And so too it is with life in general. A lot of your doubt, they're in your head, and other people aren't seeing that actually. Other people see what you choose for them to see. So use that knowledge and think about, how you actually go about your role, think about the messages you're giving other people, and give it a go. Because actually the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a bit of a trip and a stumble, and you're going to pick yourself up and dust yourself off, and you're going to do it again. So I would just say, take a deep breath and think most of the doubts are in your own head. Other people cannot see them. They're not going to know them unless you tell them. And get a bit of a plan, ask for help, and give it a go.
I think for me, don't think about work that much, because I think seriously, this is from very stereotypical from Asian family. I was always taught, study hard, get the grades, and all that sort of stuff. And you know what? I did econometrics at university. Didn't use any of it. I still can't. I don't understand regression analysis. Never have. Never will. I passed. Never will. The thing I learned from that is actually how to work in a group. Those life skills, they're the things that are actually going to really help you in terms of your interaction with your colleagues, your manager, and everybody else. That sort of skill. So there's always this challenge there. Do you hone in everything on your best skills, or do you improve what you can? There's two schools of thought, and I'm sure you guys know a bit than I do about it. Do you really hone in on your strengths, or do you develop on your weakness? My personal feeling is you can go all you can, but you're always going to have to deal with people no matter where you're. We've been talking about people the whole time, whether it's your colleagues, your manager, anybody else. So what I found, and this is only applicable to me, I found interest completely outside of work. So I blogged about food. That's what I kind of do to get me outside of the office. I developed different friends, different other skills. Funny enough, social media, blogging, something now it's becoming really useful. So sometimes I think develop your other skills. So maybe for want of a better word, your soft skills, if you really want to do it. And again, coming back to Rebecca's point, don't be too hard on yourself, because you're the only one who can be too hard. Have you ever had friends who you think, oh, they've just been too hard on themselves? And strangely enough, you've probably been the same thing to yourself. As I said, you could be falling over a ditch, no one kind of knows about it. And for me, the worst presenter I've ever seen is the one that makes the excuse before they present. Oh, I'm sorry, I was really sick last night. I didn't sleep very well. You set the entire tone for the rest of the presentation. And I'd be sitting there looking for where that's impacted you. Whereas exactly like Rebecca said, just be yourself. No one kind of knows it unless you tell them about it. And in fact, they would have got a great experience from it, except you told them that there was something wrong from the beginning.
Or imagine yourself what I now do, because sometimes we kind of think, oh, everybody's looking at us. I don't know if you can do this, but I do this regularly now, is imagine yourself, take yourself out of this earth. I know it sounds strange, but it's like the Google map, just take yourself out of it, and I do. And when you look down, you think, oh my God, I can't even find myself down there. And when you realise that, you think the problems that you face, the things that's happening, really actually minuscule, doesn't even actually exist. Like if you look at it globally. So I do. I've been to kind of elevate myself. But that's my tip. Try to elevate your thoughts, your mind outside of this space. You know. And here, I'm just thinking, if you go up here, like we don't even. What we're discussing here is just like the universe, and thinking, what are they talking about down there? But on that note, look, thank you so much to the panellists and to you, especially the audience, for participating. Thank you.
Thank you.